I'm Stacy Holmes, and this is Glordinary, a few moments where we celebrate God's glory and champion the ordinary. I'm glad you're here. I hate goodbyes. You too? They're emotional, they loom over you, and it's a gajillion times worse if you don't have a solid plan for when you'll see someone again. Ugh. So let's just skip the goodbyes and say see you later to our spring series, Habits That Work. Oh yes, it's time to wrap this thing up today with a nice neat bow because Maycember is upon us. Dun dun dun. That's right, the month of May masquerades as December, complete with all the extras, the parties, the ceremonies, the concerts, the activities, the games, the gifts to buy, the house to clean, and we haven't even mentioned the yard work. Deep breaths. We're gonna do Maycember together with 4 brand new Glordinary episodes ready to keep us company. But before we say so long, let's talk through our Habits That Work series one more time. You could probably say this in your sleep by now, but here's the message paraphrase of Romans 12, 1 and 2. So here's what I want you to do. God helping you. Take your everyday, ordinary life, your sleeping, eating, going to work, and walking around life, and place it before God as an offering. Embracing what God does for you is the best thing you can do for Him. Don't become so well adjusted to your culture that you fit into it without even thinking. Instead, fix your attention on God. You'll be changed from the inside out. Readily recognize what He wants from you and quickly respond to it. Unlike the culture around you always dragging you down to its level of immaturity, God brings the best out of you, develops well-formed maturity in you. Well, we've spent a month of coffee time breaking down these verses section by section, but after circling Atlanta for the last 4 weeks, it's time to land this plane with the pivotal point of Paul's words. They were actually tucked in near the beginning of our reading. Ready? It's paraphrased like this: embracing what God does for you is the best thing you can do for Him. I like this paraphrased wording for 2 reasons. One, because when we embrace what God does for us, it really is the best thing we can do. There's no regret to following God's ways. His plans just work. His ways are just good wisdom for your life. That doesn't make them easy, but it does make them simple. But the paraphrase of this verse ends with 2 more words. It's not to just embrace God's ways for us, but to embrace them for Him. Embracing what God does for you is the best thing you can do for Him. So how do we do this? Well, Paul guides us through step by step, and we've talked about it all month long. We begin by taking our everyday, ordinary habits, because for better or worse, we're all living according to our habits. They shape our lives and schedules. They order our worlds and affections. In fact, habits form us much more than we form them. Paul explains for us how to, quote, take our everyday ordinary life, how to put our brains to better use to transform our minds. He sketches out a plan for how to avoid becoming so well adjusted to our culture, how to fix our attention on God. You might call it a remedy, but the early church fathers, well, they called it a rule of life. And while that phrase rule of life might leave you a bit squeamish, its Greek origin simply means a trellis, the wooden or metal support structure to help a plant stay off the ground, to grow upward and produce good fruit. A rule of life, then, is an intentional pattern of disciplines, habits, to provide structure for growth, to order our everyday, ordinary lives. And if that word rule makes you nervous, just replace it with rhythm, a rhythm of life. Oh, it's not meant to make life more difficult, more exhausting, and more restrictive. We certainly don't need that. No, a rhythm of life is meant to craft a life, a more meaningful life, by actually doing less, not more, to curate our lives with keystone habits. We highlighted 8 of these superpower habits from the book The Common Rule, habits of purpose in an age of distraction. Keystone habits like scripture before phones, an hour of weekly conversation with a trusted friend, a daily shared meal, and putting your phone away for 1 hour every day. Those are just a few of the examples, because that's the beauty of a rule of life. We develop a trellis, and it looks a little bit different on each one of us because we're all uniquely wired. My trellis is gonna look different than yours, and yours will look differently than mine. My hang-ups are different than yours. Your strengths are different than mine. Seasons of life look differently too. Young kiddos are vastly different than empty nest living. Single looks different than married. No two people will have the same rhythm of life, and no one person has the same rhythm of life in every season of life. Well, maybe in a monastery. Which is why Paul urges us to fix our attention on God, to change from the inside out, to readily recognize our inner movements and quickly respond to them. A rule of life helps us identify the movement and counter-movement in our lives. Movements being the habits taking us closer to God and His ways, or counter-movements, the habits taking us further away from God and His ways. Because I don't need any help whatsoever dragging me down to the world's level of immaturity. It's all around us. What I need is to recognize and respond quickly to the counter movement in my heart. But I couldn't do that without deciding to cut away certain habits from the trellis of my life. Because unlike the culture around you, God brings out the best out of you. God develops well-formed maturity in you. And well-formed maturity comes from well-formed habits. God brings the best out of us from forming the best in us. And that, my friend, is how we're able to embrace what God does for you. This concept of embracing what God has for us came to life for me. You see, my husband, John, well, he's an excellent forgiver, a fast forgiver too. And that works out pretty well for me. I'm not necessarily a grudge holder, but I need a minute to process whatever just happened before I can just willy-nilly start throwing out forgiveness. Not John. We can have a heated conversation, go toe-to-toe, and that man will suddenly stop. He'll stand right in front of me, lift my chin so my eyes can look directly into his eyes, and he'll wrap his arms around me, embracing me. He'll say, "Stace, I'm saying this one way. You're saying it another way. But at the end of the day, we're on the same team. We're best friends. I love you, and that's not going to change." And the whole time he's doing this, my arms are hanging like limp noodles at my side because I just need a minute. I'm not there yet. The whole time he's embracing me until he'll grab my one limp noodle arm and wrap it around him, and then grab my other noodle arm and do the same. And it never fails to melt my heart, bring a smile to my face, and allow truth to rush back in again. He embraces me until I'm able to embrace him back. That's the purpose of a rule of life, a trellis. As God's embracing us, it gives us a little support to embrace him back. Our rule of life, our habits, give the limp noodles of life just a little bit extra. Because life can feel like we just need a minute to recalibrate. But as the Common Rule author Justin Earley says so perfectly, quote, "A beautiful life inspires a beautiful life, even when the imitation of Christ is a sorry echo of the real thing." Because a rule of life is worth doing, even if and even when we're doing it poorly. It's why we stop trying and start training our habits with a rule of life. For the first time, or the 101st time, curating our habits well to embrace what God does for us because it's the best thing we can do for Him. Remember, you're not alone in this. I'm praying for you, friend. Have a glordinary day.